Okay, so we're diving into the world of DNA today. We've got some really interesting material about DNA analysis and how biotechnology is using it.
It's incredible to think that such a tiny molecule essentially holds the blueprint to life, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. It's like this microscopic instruction manual that determines everything about us. And get this, even the tiniest variations in our DNA can reveal a gold mine of information.
It's true. And it's those subtle variations that have actually revolutionized identification techniques through what we call DNA fingerprinting.
DNA fingerprinting. Yeah, I've seen that on those crime shows, but I'll be honest, it always seems so complex. How does it actually work?
Well, imagine this. Scientists use these special enzymes. Think of them like molecular scissors that cut the DNA at very specific locations.
Okay, so they're basically chopping up the DNA.
Exactly. And these cuts, they create fragments of DNA, but these fragments, they vary in length. It's these different lengths that are key.
I'm intrigued. So how do these different lengths of DNA help identify someone?
Well, scientists use a technique called gel electrophoresis. It separates these DNA fragments based on their size. And when you look at the results, you see these bands.
Wait, are those the banding patterns they always show on TV?
You got it. Those banding patterns are unique to each individual. It's like a fingerprint, but on a molecular level.
That's incredible. So it's not just about theory. This actually has real-world impact, like solving crimes and stuff.
Oh, absolutely. It's used in forensic science all the time. It's also how paternity tests are done. And, it's even helped identify missing persons. It's really remarkable.
Wow, that's incredible. And I read that scientists can now take this even further with something called DNA sequencing.
That's right. So while DNA fingerprinting analyzes specific segments of DNA sequencing, that allows us to determine the precise order of those building blocks within a DNA molecule. We call those building blocks nucleotides.
So it's like reading the entire instruction manual letter by letter instead of just looking at a few pages.
A perfect analogy. It gives us a complete genetic blueprint of an individual.
So if I understand correctly, DNA fingerprinting is like a barcode scan, while DNA sequencing is like deciphering the entire language of our genes.
Exactly. And this knowledge, it's not just for scientists in labs. It has real implications for our everyday lives, especially when we're talking about biotechnology.
Okay, so let's talk about that. How is this understanding of DNA being applied in the real world? What can we actually do with this knowledge? Biotechnology. Now, there's a word that sparks my curiosity. It feels like with all these advancements, we're living in a sci-fi movie sometimes.
I agree. It's pretty remarkable,
Yeah.
especially when you think about how we're harnessing the power of DNA to revolutionize different fields, like medicine.
Okay, so let's start with medicine. You mentioned earlier those tiny typos in our DNA. Can scientists actually spot those typos now before they become a problem?
They can. That's what genetic testing can do. It can actually assess your risk for certain diseases, things like cancer. And if you know your risk, you can start looking at ways to prevent it, right?
So you're saying it's like we can look into our own instruction manual and be like, well, better watch out for that.
Yes, exactly. And beyond predicting your risk, biotechnology is transforming how we treat diseases too.
Really?
Take insulin, for example.
Right.
People with diabetes rely on insulin, but it used to be much more difficult and expensive to produce. Now, because of genetically modified bacteria, it's much more readily available and affordable.
Wow. So we're using microscopic factories to create life-saving medication. Amazing. What about gene therapy? I hear a lot about that. Is it living up to all the hype?
Gene therapy has incredible potential. I mean, imagine being able to target and correct the gene responsible for a specific condition, like cystic fibrosis, for example.
It's like we're learning to speak DNA's language, giving our bodies the right instructions to heal.
Exactly. It's remarkable, isn't it?
It is. But let's switch gears a little bit. What about agriculture? How's biotechnology being used there?
Well, one of the most significant areas is global food security. With climate change and unpredictable weather, we need crops that can withstand those challenges.
So are scientists developing crops that are, like, immune to drought?
Yes, and they can thrive even in really harsh conditions. Imagine what that means for farmers, especially in parts of the world that experience frequent droughts.
That's huge. And a more reliable food supply. I've also heard about using biotechnology to improve the nutritional value of crops.
That's right. For example, scientists have developed varieties of rice that are fortified with vitamin A. That's a major breakthrough, especially in regions where rice is a staple and vitamin A deficiency is a serious problem.
It's amazing how we can use biotechnology to address nutritional needs. Okay, I have to ask about the environment now. We talked about medicine and agriculture. What about the impact on the environment?
Biotechnology is offering some innovative solutions for environmental problems, like bioremediation.
Bioremediation, what's that?
So basically, it utilizes microorganisms to clean up pollutants and toxins from contaminated environments.
Oh, interesting. So instead of using chemicals, we're using tiny organisms to clean up our messes.
Yes, exactly. Harnessing the power of nature to help heal itself. And that's just one example. We're also seeing progress in developing renewable energy sources, like biofuels, which are derived from plant material.
Wow, so we're talking about a cleaner and more sustainable future. That sounds really promising. But with all these advancements, there must be some challenges, right?
Of course. Biotechnology is a relatively young field, and we're still learning as we go. It's crucial to be cautious and consider all potential risks.
And ethical implications too, I imagine.
Absolutely. Like with any powerful technology, we need to have those conversations about the ethical implications
Hmm.
to ensure that these advancements are used responsibly and safely for everyone.
It's about finding that balance, isn't it? Weighing the benefits with the unknown.
Yes, exactly. And that requires an open and ongoing dialogue.
It really is a lot to consider, this amazing potential of biotechnology, but also making sure we're not, getting ahead of ourselves.
It's a balancing act, for sure. And the key is that we keep talking about it. We need to be having those discussions, asking those tough questions, about the kind of future we want.
It's almost like we're talking about a new era of human evolution, right? We have a hand in shaping our own biology now. It's exciting and kind of intimidating all at the same time.
It is, but that's why it's so important that we proceed thoughtfully and responsibly. Great power, great responsibility, right?
Right. So where do we go from here? What are the big things we need to be thinking about with all of this?
Well, one thing that's crucial is making sure everyone have access to these technologies. We don't want to create a world where it's only available to a select few. It's about using it to benefit all of humanity.
That's a really good point. Access for everyone. Okay, and what about the environment? Are there any risks we haven't talked about yet that we should be aware of?
I think a key is to proceed carefully. Like with anything new, we need to look at the long-term impacts. Make sure we're not solving one problem and creating a new one. Finding those truly sustainable solutions.
So it's not just about the science then. It's about our values, our ethics, making deliberate choices about the kind of future we want to build.
Exactly. And that's a conversation that everyone needs to be a part of. Scientists, policymakers,
Mhm.
everyone.
It's been an amazing deep dive. DNA, biotechnology, there's so much to learn. Any final thoughts for our listeners today before we wrap up?
I just say stay curious. Keep learning, stay informed, and don't be afraid to, really think critically about all of this and get involved in those conversations. This technology has the potential to change everything, so it's up to all of us to help shape what that change looks like.
That's a great note to end on. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of DNA and biotechnology. It's a journey, and it's just getting started.